Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Deep Threads podcast. I'm your host, recovering journalist Dean Balsamini, coming to you from the cozy confines of Cedar Beans Coffee Joint in the great state of New Jersey. I'm delighted to have as my guest the one, the only Kevin Kernan, affectionately known as America's most beloved sports writer. More than 45 years in the business, 23 years as a New York Post columnist. He also is a Hall of Fame sports writer, and he has his own podcast, Coach and Kernan podcast, with the real voices of the game. And currently, you can find him writing entertaining columns on ball9.com. Thank you for coming, Kevin.
Great to be with you, Dean. Jersey guy, grew up in New Jersey, so have a lot of love for that state. Me and Stan Kasten, Stan is a Jersey guy, Jersey
Yeah,
Shore guy. So
yeah.
great state. And I'm down here in St. Augustine, Florida now. Freezing, Dean. It's 56 degrees, but we'll survive.
I'm crying for you, Kevin. It's brutal over here. Speaking of brutal, pitchers and catchers are February
Mhm.
11th. You want to give me kind of your synopsis on how do you think the Yankees and Mets did this offseason?
Well, I thought the Mets did great because getting Bichette kind of fell into their lap. Bichette was my number one guy going into the offseason because he's a real baseball player, and by that I mean he's not all nerded out. He just wants to drive in guys. He's got great guts. Um, he him and Donnie Manley had a great connection. So the Mets kind of salvaged their offseason. Now, having said that, they made so many changes, and I was a big Alonso fan. I knew Alonso all the years I was in New York. Obviously, talked to him. Still go to spring training, so I see him. But I knew he was on the way out. You could just tell. You could sense it. Nimmo, I think, was starting to go downhill. Same with McNeil. Edwin Diaz is a blow to them, no matter what they say. Overall, I think they did better than the Yankees. The Yankees ran it back. I know Cashman will say they didn't just run it back. They got a lot more, they got other pieces, and the young pieces they have are a year ahead. But, they didn't they got Cody Bellinger back. They had to get him back. Dean, I've seen this many times. Brian Cashman, and it's the way the Yankees do business. They paint themselves in a corner, and then they make themselves heroes for signing the guy that they had to sign. And to me, Bellinger had nowhere else to go, and he was played perfectly by his agent, of course, and we all know how that goes. Having said all that, hey, anything can happen. The Yankees are going to be good enough to make the playoffs. Maybe they'll get it together. They can't continue to waste Aaron Judge's career, and the pitching is the big question mark. And I know, I know you study it well, so you know it backwards and forwards. But I always say too, after a while, these teams need something to strive for. And let me get to the Dodgers real quick. I'm not going to go heavy on the Dodgers, but their manager, Dave Roberts, is old school. He dealt with the nerds. He kind of lost his way with the nerds a little bit. And I think he had a meeting with them and said, listen, we need to incorporate more baseball into our world. And he did, and we saw that now the last 2 years, the things that he's done. First of all, I'm going to ask you a question, Dean. Say the Yankees got ahead of the game and figured out that Ohtani was going to be the key for the next 10 years and did whatever they had to do to sign Ohtani, knowing he was going to open up a floodgate of talent from Japan. Say they did that. Say they got Yamamoto, and say Yamamoto pitched Game 3 of the World Series for the Yankees, complete game.
I
Then
know
he
where
comes
you're going with this too. Go.
Yeah. Then he pitched Game 6, had a great outing, did all his things, 18 inning game. He's ready to go. He comes in to close the game I think it's 2 2/3 innings. The Yankees never would have let Yamamoto get to that point. They would have sat him down and said, no, we're protecting you for the future. They don't go for it the way you should go for it. They've had their opportunities, and little things kill them every year because they don't work on the little things, and it catches up to them. 2 years ago, it was not covering first base. Cole just forgot to cover first base. Last year, the Blue Jays ran circles around them. The Blue Jays played great baseball. I think they're going to miss Bichette, so they may come back to the pack a little bit. So So the Yankees put out this thing like we're there. It's just it's like March Madness. Anything can happen. No, you need to get there. And what do the Dodgers do? They keep everybody hungry. They do my old friend Pat Riley. They do the old three-peat thing. They wanted three-peat, and they get Kyle Tucker, who's gonna just meld perfectly. It's a perfect spot for him because he's not the big star. So now they improve their offense. They improve every year. And I said it last year at the time. They had two pitching staffs. They had one for the regular season and one for the postseason, and it paid off great in the postseason what they did. So yes, the Yankees are going to be interesting. They're going to win some games. They're going to beat up on all the crappy teams, and there's a lot of crappy teams. But they didn't make the big move. They don't make the big move that makes the difference in winning a World Series.
Absolutely. It's funny. A good friend of mine, Rob Gavin, now works for the Buffalo News. He calls them the Bronx bridesmaids.
That's a good one.
I'm telling you,
Yeah.
they treat it like a pass-fail course, I believe. There's no doubt that they're a good team, and this is the problem trying to argue with the corporate pinheads here, because they will always tell you we win our 94 games. We know that you're good enough, but it's not a heavy lift when you got a league where half the teams aren't trying. There's six playoff spots now?
Yeah, 12 overall, so it's
yeah, so six, right. Okay. So if the Yankees can't win their share of games against all the tomato cans out there, but they don't embrace the pressure, they really don't. There's it's a likable team, but they've got a glass jaw, like you said. I don't understand why anybody in their field wouldn't want to use all the tools in the toolbox, which is running, hit and running, dealing, like you said. And then when it comes to you get to the ultimate spot that you're still playing games like it's the regular season. I go back to like what you said about Yamamoto is true. I was thinking about the 2001 World Series. This organization today would have not pitched Randy Johnson and Schilling the way Brenly did. That was the only way he could have beaten that Yankee team.
The only way. And I was there for all those games and things like that. And the other thing, and by the way, your friend in Buffalo, it's a great nickname, and I think he knows bridesmaids very well, being from Buffalo, with what happens up there with the football team, of course. Yeah, so there's one thing going for it. George went for it. Now, I'm going to tell you a quick story. Hopefully, I'll do the abridged version. The thing we have to understand about Hal Steinbrenner is that he's not his dad. He doesn't want to be his dad, and that's key. I remember I was very close to Hank. Hank had his dad's ability, but Hank had some demons, couldn't get over the demons, and eventually caught up to him, unfortunately. But Hank wanted to win. Hank was on top of things. Hank knew what was going on in the organization. Hal was much different. So one day I asked Hal down in Tampa, I said, Hal, what's the difference between you and your brother? Now, a good reporter, I believe, is like a lawyer. He knows the answer before the answer comes out. So I was expecting this kind of answer, but to Hal's credit, he gave me a great, honest answer. And we were in his office, and he's got the high desk with the architecture type desk. Everything's in its place, that type of thing. So he said, "Well, the difference is when George, he didn't say Dad, when George would bring home, like say some football players from Notre Dame, maybe they were having a game down there or something, bring them home for dinner. Hank would go in the backyard and play catch with them. Hank would run around with them. Meanwhile, I would get on my little Star Wars bike with all my Star Wars toys and ride around the neighborhood. And now, and here we are. Hal's all grown up. He's a pilot. He oversees things. He's way up here. He doesn't get down and gritty like his dad did, because he doesn't want to be his dad. And I get it. We've seen that with relationships with fathers and sons. But to succeed in New York, you got to be like George Steinbrenner, and you're going to have your failures. Here's the point I made in one of my columns recently. If Cashman, and Cashman is a great manipulator. I give him great credit for that. He really knows how to manipulate people and be successful in that way and survive. But he should have manipulated Hal, because this year going in, this will be the 17th straight season, no World Series for the Yankees. Okay? Well, George had that gap where he had 18 years. So I would have sold Hal on, hey, you can really beat your dad here. Let's make a couple. Let's go for it. 2027 is going to be a lockout, so who knows what's going to happen with
Sure.
contracts after that. We have a great We only, Judge is getting older. We got Cole coming back this year. Hopefully, it works out for him, but we can't count on that. So let's really go for it. Let's really oversell this team because you want to beat your dad, and maybe that might have worked. Instead, it's let's sit back, let's hope everything. They got into that old thing the Mets used to do. Remember the Mets for many, many years? If everything goes right, if everybody stays healthy,
We'll have meaningful games, right?
yeah. Well, that's and again, let's not let the Mets off the hook. They couldn't be one of those 12 teams. That's how bad it was for last year. So they're really, but they were a little more inspired this year. They made unbelievable changes. So we'll see. But that's what I would have done if I was Cashman. I would have kind of would have really stuck it to Hal a little bit. Like, let's go there, because it's my understanding. Hal. I don't know how you can be in baseball your whole life and really not know any baseball people. I don't know who Hal gets his information from. Obviously, Cashman, some of the people who work for the Yankees. But I don't know if he's plugged into the real baseball, even the baseball ownership network. Like I hate to come back to the Dodgers, but again, Stan Kasten, I opened up the whole. Stan he knows how to get it done everywhere he's been. Atlanta, Washington. He's also an NBA guy. So you need that guy that really knows how to get there, find the right people, and then make the moves and get it done. And the Yankees always give us enough, but they don't give us what we really need. And all those Yankee fans want another championship. It seems like so long, but at least it's not 40 years like the Mets.
Right, and the thing is, obviously everybody has a voice now, so you're going to have the lunatic fringe getting ridiculous and saying the Yankees are they're not horrible. We know that. We know they're good. But it's like a student. I always tell my son, if you're trying your best, if it's a 70 or 100, I don't care what the grade is, as long as you're leaving it all out there. I don't feel the Yankees leave it all out there. They leave you at the doorstep. And the problem is, like you said, my sell would have been the last team to win 3 championships were the Yankees. Don't let the Dodgers do it. Let's take this on. It's a good sales pitch. The fans want to hear somebody advocate. Look at all the teams that have trolled the Yankees in the last couple of years. The Marlins did it right after the trade deadline. The Dodgers enjoyed doing it. I was at Game 1. I took my son to Game 1 of the World Series in 24, and we, until the last inning or whatever. It was like the Dodgers are trolling the Yankees, and then that time when the Yankees were down 3-0 in the ALCS, and they're showing them clips of the Red Sox. You have this wonderful, the best brand in sports, the legendary brand. You don't need to go elsewhere. Toot your own goddamn horn.
Well, that all goes back, I think, to just how not want to be like George.
Really, I think Cashman gets, all the younger sports guys always say, well, they always win. They don't always win. Qualifying for the playoffs is not winning. Ask Jeter. Ask all those players. And I wanted to ask you this: do they not want to integrate any of the old Yankees, even from the Torre era? You have guys who can't hit for average. You have Paul O'Neill in your booth. You have David Cohn in your booth. You have a wealth of players who were grinders and gamers, and I don't see any of them being used.
There's a simple answer to that. And Coney, Coney you could tell how Coney was talking through the years. I don't know if he's still in that position, but he wanted to be a pitching coach. You could just see he wanted to be a pitching coach. They never opened it up for any of those guys. They don't even let those guys really talk too much. Look at it this way. They let Aaron Judge almost become a San Francisco Giant. Cashman almost let him go. How saved the day there? So they don't. That group from previous years, they've kind of cut ties with them, as you can see with Old Timers Day and things like that. Now they did back CC Sabathia very much for his Hall of Fame candidacy. But when I was during the Hall of Fame time, I get emails from all these different teams, and especially I remember the Astros on Billy Wagner for years. They were just pumping them. This is why you got to vote for this guy. And the Yankees seem to have forgotten their past because I if they don't want. I think they don't want to remember their past. They want to live off their past, but they don't celebrate their past. And the easy answer here, Dean, and this is going to be, it's too simple. Cashman went all nerd. He went all nerd. Nerds, Fishman, and those guys. They don't want veteran guys around. Look at that coaching staff too. That it's changed too, and so there's they don't want those guys around anymore. They want to do it their way. The drive line way, so to speak. I call it industrial park baseball. Basically, because all these baseball schools are in these little industrial parks, and they've all made their way up into the major leagues. So the Yankees want to do it their way. They want to do it the nerd way, and it's not working.
Hey, and
Thank God, though. I will say this. Thank God they have Judge. If they didn't have Judge, this would be an unbelievable disaster.
well, meanwhile, you bring up a good point about Judge. I brought up the point that, well, good for you. You, in the end, that contract is a steal. Now pay him back by surrounding with players with that extra money, and Judge will not renegotiate. Other players would say, "Hey,
Yes.
I know we made that deal, but I'm not happy." Judge won't do that.
And no, and he pushes to get them to get guys, because any kind of help he gets helps them along a little bit. But even for Judge, it's too much to ask. Although I will say this: what I saw to Judge this year, mentally, he's really at the top. I think he's at the top of his game. If I were the Yankees, the simple thing I would do, and I know, and this is the other thing. When was the last time Cashman really traded young talent? To make a move. I would, and Skubal, I would go all in on Skubal, whatever it took to get Skubal. Then all of a sudden, you're going to see Judge elevate his game. Bellinger's going to elevate his game. Bring a few more winners in there, and guys that are not just surviving, and you see a difference. Little things. I'm going to get to some little things real quick. Everybody talks about Jazz Chisholm, right? And Jazz did okay, but you know what play I remember most from the playoffs last? I think it was a playoff. Yeah, it was against Boston. It was when Jazz fell asleep at second base and the guy scored, and Rodon looked at him and gave him the evil eye, and he even gave him the eye thing, like, "Hey, look, turn around and look, anticipate." Do you think Jeter? To me, that's the play that shows the difference between these two organizations from what they were. Jeter made the great flip play, anticipating things would go wrong. Jazz couldn't even anticipate that the Red Sox runner would go around the base and score. It might have been the Blue Jays. I forget which game it was now. And that's the difference. You need guys who want to win and will do anything it takes to win. And they don't have that right now.
I think the funny thing about Jazz is he's got the tools and everything, but then this has to do with the coaching. You get a baseball version of a Bill Parcells or something like that, they'll squeeze every bit of that juice out of that lemon, because that guy's talented, but he doesn't utilize all his skill, and he has.
Getting back to what you said about speed, use Jazz's speed. The Yankees have forgotten about the speed and part of the game. It's huge. Speed is huge, and especially now because teams don't know what they're doing defensively anymore. That's why I like a Bichette. That's he does those little things, and the Yankees don't utilize speed. They don't get the best out of Jazz. That's a great point. And even some of their other players, they don't get the best out. And Volpe, I saw the play when Volpe went down with the shoulder, and I'm sitting there watching again. I said, "Oh, he hurt his shoulder." He hurt his shoulder that play, and they kind of put up with it all year. To take care of the problem. Do what you got to do. And then they let the kid hang off to dry because he had a terrible year. Well, he couldn't swing. He had one arm.
I also contend, I think Volpe's a second baseman. I said that from Jump Street.
All my scout friends say that. They without it, and I've been writing that for years. He is a second baseman. Actually, they screwed up the second baseman shortstop. The kid who also fell off did not do well for them. He should have been the shortstop. And Volpe should have been the second baseman.
Well, I go back to when they were trying to sell us that Glaber was a shortstop. The Yankees will gaslight you until they can't do it anymore. That's what drives me nuts.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because one of my jobs when I was with the Post was, I was able to, because I am a good reporter and I also know I played baseball through college, so I know the game. I'm not saying I was, I'm not a star, but I'm saying at least I played through college, so I understand the game. So they would send me out to do some kind of like scouting type, and I went down to see Glaber when they made the trade, and the first thing I said when I watched him take infield, I said, "He's not a shortstop. If anything, he's a third baseman, second baseman. But the Yankees gaslight you. And the scary part, and this is why I hope it's not happening, maybe they actually think he was a shortstop and couldn't even see it themselves. And that's possible.
And then I'll go again. How do you, with the Martian Dominguez? I saw him play center field before he got hurt. He looked okay. If you were going to get him into the lineup or ease him in, how do you put him in a position that he doesn't play before? I would have put him at center field and see how he does. That's what he was used to.
You talked to Rob Thompson back in the day when Rob was he was in charge of their outfielders, and I knew it myself. But he, again, you asked the question. Center field's the easiest position to play because you see the ball, and this kid's got enough going on. Plus, we can see from what we can see from Jason Dominguez, great bat, doesn't work as hard as he should work, and he allowed himself to get a little fat, but they also didn't. They didn't work him the way he should have. Put him in center field. Put him in a situation to succeed, not to fail. And now you're stuck with him and Spencer. Same thing's happening in Spencer Jones. I know people who coached Spencer Jones as an amateur back in San Diego. They tell me that he's, as a personality, he's Aaron Judge reincarnated. He's the greatest kid in the world. Greatest kid in the world. If he's the greatest kid in the world, can launch home runs like that, I'm finding a way to develop him so he's in my lineup in some fashion very quickly. They haven't done that.
There's no fear for jobs on that team. You can still get that message across no matter how much money they're making, and it's playing time or whatever. You can do that. And the Yankees, they just don't do that. They don't dictate the pace of a game. It was so refreshing to see Schlittler's swag and backing it up.
Yes.
But he wasn't just shooting off his mouth. He was out there making pitches, not just throwing. That's what I was so excited watching him pitch.
Well, I break it down even easier, and you can see it right away. And that's why I love Schlittler right from the start. He wants to kick your ass. Yeah. I want guys who want to kick your ass.
He didn't give you the bullshit. He didn't give you the bullshit response. Well, it's Boston. I loved them. He says, no, I want to send them home.
Yeah, and he also, he grew up a Yankee fan, and he just doesn't like the Red Sox, and he said it right then and there, just like the kid from the Red Sox said it, which I appreciate too. You got to play into this generation and let them think, let them be more important than they are, and let them develop in their own pace, and let them have some power. Empower these guys. Schlittler, to me, I think he should have been up. I saw scouts told me in spring training he's their best pitcher. They told me that, right after getting done with Steinbrenner Field last year, and yet. It took a while for them to get up, and it gets back to what I was saying about they got to cater everything a certain way because they got to be the heroes. They don't let the players be the heroes.
See, if they built the roster right, having Ryan McMahon is a good thing because he's really good defensively. But they waited also so long to pull the trigger on that. They should have won the division, and maybe things would have turned out a little better. They always go into the season where they need things, and they try to do. It's like someone driving on that baloney tire. They won't change that tire until the thing's about to pop.
No, and that's again. I think it gets back to my central thing, which I just said. They want to be the heroes. The front office wants to be. Cashman wants to be the hero, and also let's not forget some of the people he has around there. Brian Sabian is a baseball. I talked to Brian 2 years ago when he got on there, and one thing Brian told me was, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. The old line. He said, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I'm in the wrong room. I think the Yankees don't encourage that kind of thinking where people can argue back and forth, and not just argue, but actually win the argument. And then, oh yeah, you're right. Let's do it this way. I don't see that change. Nothing's changed. It's the same philosophy.
Yeah, I mean that's so weird. And the fact is, being that Cashman was around, I think Cashman doesn't like just the idea of adding rings in the same formula. He's got to try to do it outside the box so he can put his stamp on this team. When meanwhile, you and I got so excited about Ernie Clement throughout the playoffs.
Yeah. Ball player.
And he's just a ball player. He's not fantastic, but he so deserved to win the MVP if Padres doesn't make that catch. I mean, he just was such a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, and again, those are the little pieces that come. It's the Marco Scudero effect. And who was the GM there? Marco Scudero was Sabian's player, and Sabian used to joke with me back in the San Francisco days. I think they called him. They gave him a name like he was the king of the hill, basically. I forget his nickname that they gave him, but that's what he was because he became that player. You always need in the playoffs. You need that player to step up, and when he does, good things happen. I do want to say one thing about because I want to get it out of the way here with Toronto. Toronto, but here we are bashing the Yankees a little bit, but I'm telling you right now, the slider that Jeff Hoffman threw was the dumbest pitch in the last 50 years of baseball, and there's no reason in the world to throw that to Rojas. Good for Rojas, did what he did, but so that shows me too. And the Yankees can give all the BS they want. Oh, we ran into a hot team. How often we hear that? They were a hot team. They beat us. Well, maybe they weren't the hottest team. If you got because the Dodgers put him in the crucible, and he throws the worst slider you could throw at that point.
I had a flashback to Mark Wohlers because when McCarver says you can't get beat by if you got beat by your best pitch, but. You're right. And then what does it say about how wonderful Mariano was when you see all these pitchers failing in the way they do? And it's just, but the Toronto outplayed them. They should have won that World Series.
They outplayed them. They got the home field advantage. They used their crowd, and the Yankees, we said it too. I've been saying it for a while. The Yankee crowd got a little too corporate through the years. Once they built the moat, it's a different world. Those Toronto fans are rabid, and it's kind of an interesting thing too. The whole Canadian American thing now. And again, I'm in Florida, so I run into Canadians all the time, and a lot of it is made up. They still love America, but as fans, you play off of that too. They were playing off. We want to beat the fans. We want to beat you. And the Yankee fans were like,
Well, the Yankee fans are like kids egging their parents on to kind of like stick up for them. It's like, come on, talk big. We're here. We're ready to explode. I was at the game where. Judge hit that ball off the foul pole. It was pretty loud. And I was there throughout all the playoffs and World Series games when in the Torrey era. That night felt like a throwback to.
That was a moment. That was a moment.
And I'm so happy for Judge because he's almost too nice to be true.
Well, I was the first guy who wrote about Judge. I was when I was in spring training one year. I go to the backfields and I see this guy just mashing the ball. I met with him. Dave Winfield happened to be at the park that week too, and so Dave had seen him play too. So I went over to Dave and I said, "Dave, what do we got here? Is this you're a tall guy? Is this kid going to be able to do it? I think he's going to be able to do it again." And Dave Winfield was on the bandwagon too, so I got right on Judge's bandwagon. I tell you right now, I've met a lot of great athletes through the years. He's number one. He's number one. And again, I covered NBA, the Bird Magic years, Jordan. I covered NFL football. I spent 10 years in San Diego, so I was with Tony Gwynn and that. So I have it. I'm not just New York. I wasn't just New York based. I've seen it all. And so I meet Judge, and then I still remember. I say, "Hey, can I give your parents a call?" He gives me the parents' number, and I wrote this all in one day. Basically, did this in one day. I'm calling from the Yankee bullpen at Steinbrenner Field because there was a game at home that day, but it was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I got a hold of the mom and the dad. And I got done with that conversation. I said, "Oh my God, what they have here is unbelievable." This kid was raised right. He's going to be unbelievable, and that makes it even more disturbing that they're racing these years. Judge should have at least one title right now, at least one. Maybe going for 2 or 3. So I'm hoping he gets his title before it's all said and done, and he's the guy that's going to make the difference. I think Hal does speak to him. Going back to my earlier point. So I think Judge, he stepped up a little bit, and I think he needs to step up more to kind of set the record straight what the Yankees needed to.
The positive side, who do you like on this current Yankee roster that you expect can take his game to another level? Is it someone like a Rice or who do you see?
Everybody seems to be expecting Rice, but I would be happy with Rice just doing what he's doing, but he's still not a first baseman to me, and that's going to hurt. I did see some things in the second half. His numbers were up, but I saw some things where the good pitchers figured him out a little bit. So here's my thing on Rice. I need him to really step it up this year. This is a big test for me with Rice. I'm not completely sold that he's the be all end all right now. He's got talent. I'm excited about him. Same thing with Austin Wells. Austin Wells went, he became a much easier out than he was, because that's what happens. The first year you do your thing. The second year the scouts got you figured out. You need to make an adjustment. So I'm excited about both of them, but I want to see both of them make an adjustment. I want to see a healthy Volpe, but here's what I want to see Volpe do. I want to see Volpe use his speed. I want to see him hit all fields. I want to see him lay down bunts. I want him to be, not that he's the scooter, but he's a good Italian shortstop. I want him to be, a little bit more like Phil Rizzuto, and instead of trying to jack things out all the time, they get home run happy.
Well, you actually told me. I remember this. This was before the slump ever happened. You said you were worried that they changed his. You watched the spring training and they had changed his swing, and you were worried it was going to change his kind of a singles and doubles kind of knoblock approach.
Exactly, and I haven't talked to Pat Rossler. He was the assistant hitting coach. I don't think he's back with the team this year. I think they made, and to me, that's a frightening thing, because he was a good veteran. He was Juan Soto's guy. Whenever you saw Soto in the dugout talking to someone about hitting, he was talking to Pat Rossler. That's another thing I want to make a point about the Yankees. They've gotten rid of too many really good coaches through the years. Obviously Rob Thompson has to take the job as the Phillies, but the Yankees had that guy sitting right there for 20 years, and he was a bench coach. Mendoza, I like Mendoza. I do think I think Mendoza did a lot for the Yankees. He did all their defensive things, and before games he would set baseballs out certain areas so he could see where it was in the dugout. He was very, very particular. So those guys, to me, the Rob Thompsons, the Mendoza, the Pat Rossler, they offset the nerds that are all there in the coaching capacity. So you got to have a balance of nerds and old school. I think they've gone too heavy with new coaches, and I'll see in spring training when I sit around. But right now, I'm a little concerned about the coaching with the Yankees as well.
You know who I would like? It probably wouldn't work, but I would love to see as Aaron Boone's bench coach, Bob Boone. I've spoken to him before.
Bob Boone is much different than Aaron Boone.
But the funny thing is, Aaron has it in him. When you ever ask him questions about USC or you ask him questions about the Eagles, he starts trash talking. He's in your face.
He gets fired up. Yes.
And then when he's at the press conferences, he's like Eddie Haskell. He's Mr. Nine. I just don't. You got it in you, Aaron. Be the way we know you can be.
Every once in a while, it sneaks out, and he usually sneaks out on the umpires. That's who you see the real Boone. Boonie's too nice. That's why I call him Kumbaya Boonie. And but he needs a little. But I think he's being told he has to be that way. But at some point, you got to fight back and be yourself.
I thought he's been better in the last couple of years than he was.
He has been better. He has been better. But there's still some things that, everybody doesn't need a nickname. You can criticize your players. I would tell Boone. Here's what I would tell Boone. And again, what do managers do in the off season? He's a great. One thing about Aaron Boone, and I think you probably know this, but he's a great imitator. He does the greatest impressions of other people and other swings. So I would tell Boone, because if I had to sit down with Boone, I would say, hey, why don't you watch 1 month go watch Dave Roberts' press conferences after the games, and how sometimes he gets on guys. And he challenges guys. Don't be afraid to challenge guys. If you did that, you'd be a better Aaron Boone, because you certainly know baseball. You're passionate. Guys love you because you're fun to be around. But at the same time, it gets back to what you said early on. Nice. The Yankees are too nice across the board. They're too nice. I want to see more pitches up and in. I want to see, and I think that's the great thing about Slittler. I think he will take over this pitching staff right now, and I think he will mentally take over this pitching staff, because Cole's going to have too much on his plate just coming back. And you talk to Cole, I've talked to him all through the years, all the way back to Pittsburgh. Good kid, really good kid, but sometimes he gets over-analytical, overthinking. And if the Yankees are making him overthink, all of a sudden, that's how you don't cover first base. You're thinking about 10 other things instead of just doing your job. So I want to see the Yankees get a little bolder, a little more ballsy, and I want to see guys like Slittler take over. And that's why I would, again, I'll say it one more time. I'm imploring the Yankees to do this somehow. Go trade for Skubal. There's no way in the world the Tigers want to pay that money. Trade for Skubal, then you got something really. Then you're putting fear into the opponents. Right now, the Yankees' opponents fear Judge. They fear some certain things, but do they fear Trent Grisham? No. Do they fear beyond Slittler and maybe Rodon? They seem to figure out sometimes. He's gotten a little tougher. I give him a little credit, but he needs to get tougher, and he's coming back from something. All pitchers come back from something. So this is not necessarily a physical thing for the Yankees. It's a mental thing. They need to change their approach to be a little bit more ball busters, a little bit more tougher. And you know what? We're the freaking Yankees.
Well, I remember I was in Philadelphia at the time at Villanova University when, the Phillies had a similar problem, and they imported Pete Rose, and he changed the
world.
Mentality and everybody was like, he even did a talk show where the fans, the fans in Philly are crazy. They were like calling up and criticizing Pete, and he says, "Sir, what do you do for a living?" He goes, "Are you the best in the world at what you do? Because I am." There's Pete Rose, but
Well, I love Pete. And since you gave me the open, I got to tell you one of my favorite Pete stories. 89, right before the shit hit the fan with Pete. I was covering the Padres, so the writers are sitting in Pete's office in Cincinnati. It was myself, Bob Nightingale, I forget who else. And Pete was peppering us with questions about the team. At the time, we were thinking, wow, he really wants to get to know the Padres. But looking back, obviously, Pete wanted to know as much as he could to make the bet. So Pete is a great, and I've seen Pete do his signing thing up in Cooperstown year after year. But Pete is he's got a great sense of humor. He used to have, he's passed on, but he had a great sense of humor about himself. And one thing, so I asked Pete a question, and he said how he screwed up, and he goes, I just can't remember. He goes, I can't remember if that was the first time I was in 10th grade or the second time I was in 10th grade. So we're not dealing with a genius here. We're dealing with a baseball genius, a guy who wanted to beat you. Getting back to my main thought here, you want to beat the opposing team, and that's why he ran over Ray Fosse. It's that simple. He wasn't trying to be a jerk. It just, that's his nature. And I want to see Volpe get a little tougher like that too. Volpe's gotten into a little bit of a lot of it's the Instagram. We're talking about the Instagram world. It's a different level of athletes, and that comes from. And you got to have that one. That's why the Bob Boone thing is a great comment. You got to have that one coach that really busts chops and really kind of is not afraid to take you on and challenge you to make you better. So there's a lot of things the Yankees could do if they would only do them.
Yeah, what I don't understand is, don't you remember there used to be the confabs with Torre, Stottlemyre, and Zimmer? I never see that in the dugout with this Yankee team, and it's just like their record is great. When you look in the almanac, if you didn't watch the games and everything, everybody's going to have nice and neat records. They'll be known as being really good, but you want the brass ring. You want this team to be the Yankees, where I want them to say the Yankees are the evil empire. We hate them again. And the Yankees used to own the Dodgers.
Owned them.
It's like now you're deferring to them, and it's kind of.
Well, the other thing too is the Torre years. Just a very strong point here. After the they would move on in the playoffs and things like that, they would have big confabs in Torre's office, and then basically Torre would throw everybody out and he'd keep a couple guys, Gordon Blakely, top scout, and he says, okay, what do I really need to do? And then he would get that. He'd get that information, and he'd run with that information.
Right.
I don't know if the Yankees have that guy now. I don't know if we bring Fishman into a meeting and that's kind of get you going, where you want to be and things like that. Because his nickname is Big Bird. He looks like Big Bird.
Right.
But he is who he is. And that's okay. You need that kind of input too. But they don't have the hardcore. They have Sabian, but I don't know if they utilize him.
Look,
same thing with some other guys.
We all know that you get once in a lifetime chemistry, because Torre needed the Yankees. Obviously, the Yankees needed Torre, and
Zimmer was the special.
Zimmer was the key.
Character.
Plus, they kind of played off each other. It was fire and ice. But my thing is, when they gave Torre that poison pen kind of, we'll start paying you for how far you get in the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, when does Cashman on the clock as far as like what have you done or what are you doing to try? Or am I wrong on that? Is it that Cashman is he handcuffed or is it just who's it?
No, he's reached a level, and I've accepted this. If I seen Brian tomorrow, I would say it's fine. He's forever. I call him forever GM. That's who he is. He's a forever GM.
Supreme Court judge.
Yeah, he's great at what he does and talking to Hal and things like that, and also keeping the Yankees kind of in there but not on top. And he didn't have to pay the same dues that Torrey had to do in that respect. I remember Torrey being. This was 2002, and some fan went up to Torrey and said, that's after losing to the Arizona, I believe, in 2001 with the the little hit, and some fan, I'm standing right there, and some fan goes, "Don't worry, Joe, you'll do better next year." And Joe turned around with that Italian background and said a few choice words to me about, do better. We got to the 7th game of the World Series, and a little duck fart beat us. So so the people outside don't really realize what Joe did, and Joe's greatest strength was like firing guys up. He knew like for example with Wells. Wells was a pain in the neck. So Joe would not let Roger would come in and say, "Hey, I'm going to go see my Skip. Can I go see my family for the weekend? I'm not pitching till whatever." Yeah, go ahead. Wells would come in and ask the same thing, and Joe would say no, because I think Joe just wanted to. He knew Roger would always be fired up. So Joe was a great psychologist, and I think Boone sees those things, but I don't think Boone acts on those things, and that would be my one piece of advice to him.
Well, the funny thing, I have my George story is I have 2 of them actually, but the one that sticks out is back in 2004, he had some newspaper people and some politicians in his box, and they were playing. It was an August game against the Blue Jays, and I'll never forget it. He's sitting in his chaise lounge looking at a big video screen or TV, and if you look the other way, you can sit outside and watch the game. And I said I wasn't going to sit outside and watch it when I have a chance to watch him watching the game. So I watched him, and the Yankees lost 3-2. And during that game, Lofton was playing right field instead of Sheffield. I remember this like it was yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
He said, "Get me Cashman." So I said, "What? Get me Cashman." Cashman comes out. He said, "Why is Lofton playing right field?" And he says, "Well, I think Joe's playing for the big." He goes, "I didn't ask you what Joe is doing. I want you to know from you why." So anyway, so he says, because I guess this is his scheduled day off, something to that extent. So George says, if Lofton wasn't playing right field and Sheffield was, the winning home run in the 7th or 8th inning would have been caught by the taller Sheffield.
Exactly.
So when everybody's leaving and George put on his show and he had all the carvings and he's telling you to enjoy yourself. So the late Congressman Guy Molinari was there. And as he was leaving, he says, "George, thank you so much. You've been a great host." He said, "You can't win them all." Steinbrenner looked at him and said, "Why the hell not, Guy? Why the hell not?" And he wasn't kidding.
No, he wasn't kidding. That's who he was.
And it was just like the Larry David character.
Just like, and I've talked to Larry David about it, and the one thing that really stuck with me with George was this was the old Yankee Stadium, and I'm in the room where you come and get tickets, right by the players' parking lot. I was there early for some reason. George comes down, tries to get a soda out of the machine. The soda machine doesn't work. He loses his money. He goes ballistic. He tells the 2 guys there, "Hey, if this soda machine isn't out of here and there's not a new soda machine in here by the time I get back, you're both fired." And what happens? He goes to lunch. These guys get on it. They get a truck. They hire up. They get a new truck. By the time George came back, there's a new soda machine. Players with soda machines, said George. You better, if I'm putting in coins, you better produce. And he doesn't want to hear any excuses. And, that's, in a way, if you look at the big picture, you can understand Cashman, because Cashman had to put up with that all those years. You can see Cashman going the other way And the same thing with Hal. But at the same time, take the good things that George gave you, And they still never won. They haven't won without George. He was still around 2009.
Well, you wrote a book on Girardi, right? So it's like
Yeah, Joe.
Did Joe get a raw deal in the end, or was it time for him to go?
Joe's a much better manager now than he was then, I believe. Joe was one of these guys, and I like Joe. He did get a raw deal in one respect that they thought it was going to be so different if they just changed down the temperature. Joe needed to. Here's the problem with Joe. We're playing there's a doubleheader, and the media comes down in between games. The way it works is in between games of a doubleheader, especially at Fenway, you meet Joe outside and get a few comments. Joe was freaking out because he had to go see the umpire, so he couldn't meet with us. So Joe, in the moment, Joe would get a little too excited, and he would forget the big picture. And I think if you listen to Joe, the broadcaster, he's on top of it. Joe, the manager, needed to be more like Joe, the broadcaster. And I tell you what, it would never happen. Now, we're seeing football going to veteran men now, veteran coaches. It's a masculine sport again. It's not happening in baseball. But I think Joe right now, and plus his kids are growing up. There's a lot of stuff going on there with kids growing up. I think Joe right now, I would love to see Joe manage again. I think he'd do terrific.
Well, how many wins do you see the Yankees and Mets getting if you had to?
I think they're going to be around the same number, and the Mets, I tell you what, the Mets could go either way to some degree. I think Bichette will keep them going. And also, I think here's another point. The Yankees were never in on Bichette, by the way, so I know there were some words that somebody said that maybe he met with whatever. There's no way that Bo Bichette was going to go back to the Yankees after he didn't like the way Dante Bichette was treated by the Yankees. So that's a family thing. Again, you got to understand it. So the Mets I think Bichette will help Soto so much because I think he's going to bring that toughness. Because I think last year, here's what I think happened with Juan Soto. He did the whole tour, seeing all the teams. He got fat. People overlook this sometimes. Players get fat and they're not ready to play. For example, Dominguez. Dominguez, I don't think was in great shape. Dominguez needs to come into shape like he's going to win the whole thing and do it. So I think having Bichette with Soto and Bichette being a fastball hitting guy is going to make the Mets very explosive. I think.
Said from Jump Street that Soto was going to the Mets.
Oh yeah, even when the first day
when the Yankees first got him, you told me that. So that's why I bring it up to give you credit. But where I was going with it is, did Soto enjoy his time with you? Because I heard that he did really love Judge though. He really did.
Of course, yeah. You gotta love. He loved Judge. But again, part of this is human nature, and I think next year will be my 50th year covering sports. You learn a lot about human nature. Soto wanted to be the man. Now he also, when you become the man, there are things that you have to do that he didn't do, and that's why they had clubhouse issues last year. It wasn't just Soto, it wasn't just Lindor being Lindor. There was some problems with Alonso. I think, as crazy as it sounds, I think there were some political ramifications too in the Mets clubhouse.
Right.
So Soto did not step up to be the leader that he should have been because he wasn't producing like he was early on because he came in out of shape. I think this year Soto will be more in charge, so to speak, and I think Bichette will be his Batman Robin type situation, and I think he'll really step it up this year. The question to the Mets is, will they have enough pitching? I don't know. Walter's going to help them. Because he gives them innings, but there's still big questions with the Mets and all those pieces. You know how this goes, Dean. Until you bring all these pieces in, they all got to click. Polanco, I like as a hitter. He'll spray the ball around. Simeon, I'm very concerned about. He looked to me like he lost it. He was a step behind. Maybe they can figure something out with him. So the Mets are an interest. They'll be a very interesting team. The Yankees will be the Yankees. Grisham's not going to have the same year. And if he does, it's going to be against bad pitching. What's he going to do in the playoffs? You saw the numbers.
Right.
Remember the numbers from the playoffs. It's abysmal. Those guys need to focus on, again, Grissom can't be home run hitting Grissom in the postseason. These guys, the Yankees just have to come to the conclusion, we need a base hit here. We need contact. But if you're constantly being told, hit it out, a swing. How many games are won without your ace swing? I think the Blue Jays showed that, and the Dodgers showed that.
Is there a
Forget about the
veteran lead?
A swing. Get your A game going.
Is there a veteran person or player that you'd inject into this Yankees lineup? Come, like, let's fast forward to October. Both teams make the playoffs. They're probably favored in the first round, but now you're getting to nut cracking time. Is there a player you'd like to see in that lineup that could, that they offensively can back up?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we'd have to see who's available at that time. That's why I know it's Screwball would be the guy to me, but
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. But I'm not saying he's the player, but you need to have a guy like because he just swings and misses too much. But you need a Castellanos type guy that's kind of like like a angry dog type guy. You need a dog. You need a guy in there that's gonna just go for it. And I think but because let's face it, Bellinger's a nice guy too, kind of mellow. Uh, let's go around the horn. McMahon, same kind of guy, nice guy. Volpe, Rice. I think Rice has that. I think Rice has the potential to be elite. He seems to me like he's in a constant state of pissed off when he's
Right,
hitting and
right.
stuff like that.
But they have
And
the goods. They can do it. They just
yeah, they can do it, but they got to
need
let
them
him do
to
it.
make that extra effort to try to.
I think you know what I would have done, and I want your opinion because I know you know the game so well. I would have looked at the whole big situation. I would have seen what was going on with Philly. I would have signed when Rio Muto was out there. I would have got Rio Muto.
I agree with you because I wanted him years ago when they didn't. I think when Sanchez was around and there was talk that maybe there might be a trade. I don't know if that was ever a realistic option, but I always liked Rio Muto. He's a gamer too.
He's a gamer, and he's slipping a little bit. And I saw him way back when Jacksonville was a Double-A team, and he was an infielder then just converted over. So he's come a long way. Good, get the Phillies got him back, but that's the kind of guy I would have added because also I'm bringing in a guy that's going to light a fire maybe under Austin Wells. I think we have too many Yankees worrying about you know, and again, nothing against Austin Wells, but I don't want to read your burrito reviews, okay, or whatever the hell you're doing. I want to read how you got that double the other way. Again, use the whole field. That's what I don't see the Yankees doing. They don't use the whole field. Now, I think they've made some changes in the hitting. Brought in some different people. We'll see where they go. So we'll see where it goes. But they need a little bit more of a guy that's going to kind of not Pete Rose, but a Pete Rose type that's going to kind of push some buttons.
Well, there you go. You gave me the perfect pivot to your current column in ball9.com. How about if a present day Thurman Munson type was behind the plate? He wouldn't be writing about burritos, but the point is, tell the audience about your column, which was a wonderful read, by the way.
Yeah, I try to look. I try to get ahead of the curve. That's always made it what I've done, and this is the 50th anniversary of him winning. 76, I think MVP and things like that. But I look at the Hall of Fame. I got to go on and digress a little bit here. I've been a Hall of Fame voter for many years. And I see these writers like this year, they all came out and said things like, oh, such a tough ballot. I had to go through all this. I filled out my Hall of Fame ballot in 10 minutes, all right? Because I saw all these guys play. And, and of course I had Jones and I had Beltran. I threw some other guys on there for fun. I put Cole Hamels on because I knew Cole was I coached Cole in Little League a little bit.
Oh, wow.
And way back in San Diego. Great kid, great family. And he was a big winner. I vote for Pettit every year. I someone saying, I don't
get that. I don't.
Pettit's got more wins than CeCe. And again, I look at wins and batting average. We got another generation that just looks at numbers now, and they can make any number look whatever they want. I want to see results. I want to see RBIs. Tony Perez told me once, we were talking up in Cooperstown, and he was an RBI king. And he said, you know what? I didn't try to lift the ball. I didn't try to pull the ball. When I had a guy running scoring, you know what I tried to do? I tried to hit the ball hard. That's all I tried to do. And Mike Piazza's dad, and I was very good friends with Vince. He's a great guy. His father would always tell him, hey, knock the pitcher's head off, and he put some curse words in there. That was Mike's goal every time he came to the bat, which was so ironic with the Clemens and the Piazza thing. But yeah, so going back to Thurman, first time I was a young reporter. I got very lucky. I became assistant sports editor right out of high school. So right out of college, I never had to cover a prep in my life. So part of the job was I could go to Yankee Stadium when I wanted and things like that. And I covered the New York Football Giants right out of college, and that was fun too. That's a story for another day. But so I got to Thurman, and again, I had just gotten done playing college baseball. I thought I was a know-it-all kind of thing. So back then, I had more hair, Afro type, red hair. So you got to look at that. I'm coming into the clubhouse. I walk up to Thurman, and it's the old Yankee Stadium clubhouse. I said, Thurman, you got a minute? He looks at me, gives me the up and down, and this is how it used to be. And he yells across, "Hey, Goose, Goose!" Now the whole clubhouse is looking at me. The whole clubhouse is looking at me. I'm being tested right now. This is how it was. And he goes, "Goose, look at this bleeping red-headed leprechaun wanting to ask me a question. This bleeping red-headed leprechaun." And so I stood there. I said, "Okay, we done now?" He goes, "Yeah, what do you need, kid?" And right then and there, I knew, and I followed him right out of 1968, drafted 4th overall. So I knew all about him, but now I knew his personality even more. That's the kind of guy that's the Energizer Bunny that keeps the team going. That's the guy that won't let you lose. That's the guy who'll play on bad knees. And so I saw his whole career, and I'm thinking about all this, and I'm reading. I do my Hall of Fame ballot, and then I get the stories next year on the Hall of Fame. And they're saying Buster Posey's going to be a no-brainer. He's got the best chance if he doesn't get in next year or the year after. And I thought of it, and I said, I think Thurman's numbers are just as good, if not better. Posey's got 1,500 hits. Thurman had more, 1,558. 3 Gold Gloves for Thurman, one for Posey. MVP, Rookie of the Year, same thing. 12 years as opposed to 11 years. And here's my big point. Thurman died in a plane crash. He had no control of it. When Clemente died, it was automatic in. His numbers were higher, but so what the hell are these baseball? Now, 0 for 19.
Thurman had like an amazing postseason, he was a postseason.
76, he hit like 450 and then 560 against the Big Red Machine.
And he was never on the extended DL. He was never.
He played through he did everything, and then he had, if you remember, he had the lightning quick release. So he threw guys out in a different way. Like Goose told me one time when he took his best shot and he sent over a note. Hey, you gave me your best shot before their teammates, and he signed it to White Gorilla. So Thurman was the epitome. And then later on, of course, 20th anniversary, I went out to Canton and did a whole piece on Thurman, and Diane spent a weekend with the family. Wonderful lady. We went to the gravesite, and I want to make this clear too. His grave is in a beautiful area, this little cemetery with a tree. It's almost like a little area where you would play baseball, and it's shaped in a baseball diamond type area. But what really struck me about the grave was you saw Thurman there, the masculine Thurman. That's what he was a masculine guy, but he was at heart, he was a Neil Diamond fan. They used to go to Neil Diamond concerts. They were friends. So there was so many layers to Thurman.
My memories of him are two. That's like you said, when the sidearm quick lightning release and that home run against Doug Bird, I believe it was.
Oh, yeah.
The playoff, which was unbelievable being, in that stadium.
I was in the bleachers when he hit that one.
Wow, I was there when Chambliss hit the home run. We were PAL guys who were in the back. That was amazing. So the Yankee legacy is so wonderful. That's the only. If people didn't love the Yankees as much as they wouldn't be so hard on.
So my question is, why aren't the Yankees pushing Thurman like I'm pushing Thurman? And so we're standing there on a beautiful day at the cemetery, and I walk around to the back of the monument, and there you see his number, 15. And so Diana had the picture of Thurman on the front engraved, but she made sure to do the back. And I said, "Why did you do the back?" And she said, "That's how fans who sat behind home plate, that's how people in TV, that's how they remember Thurman, seeing the number 15. Yeah, it was a powerful moment. Years later, Kevin Millar, I would talk to guys all the time because I was a big Thurman fan. Millar, and he played that way. Millar he modeled his game after Thurman Munson. He was not a catcher, but he played the same type of way. Had fun with it, did some things. Number 15. So if you read the column, I won't go into all the numbers. And I
did read it. It was great. And like I said,
I know. I'm talking about the listeners. If they go read the column, they'll see. There's a whole list. I dug up 2 historian baseball friends of mine, and had them to give out some great numbers. The numbers are overwhelming in Thurman's, yet he can't get in the Hall of Fame. And Posey's a no can't miss. So I don't understand what's going on here. And again, part of his, I'm 72. The olds, people think the olds don't know anything anymore, and the younger writers, they just go in their own little world, and they've just taken it for granted. Thurman Munson, and now the next time that classic era committee meets, because that's who he is now, that's the December of 77. So that would be 78 that he could get inducted, which would be a great time for him to get in. 50th anniversary of the 78 championship. It would be great for the Hall of Fame. Great for Thurman. That's what I pushed for Goose years ago. I can't remember all the numbers that got Goose in, helped get Goose in, and I'm doing the same thing for Thurman now because
I think your column will get the ball certainly started. Just two quick questions before I go, because one person had asked me with the Ohtani contract.
Yes.
When do they ever pay for that? When does that kick in for like down the road or like that? I know they deferred it, but when does that actually hit the Dodgers or?
I'll be long gone. I don't know when that happens. It's a Bobby Bonilla type thing. I think even this year, aren't they paying Tucker some crazy little number too? That's deferred.
Yeah. And my final thing is a little
Guggenheim. You can't beat Guggenheim.
Regarding the Spurs, my son is like the biggest Spurs fan, and you wrote about Tim Duncan. Did you follow him for that, or how long did you cover him, or what was the genesis of covering of the Duncan?
Yeah, I was covering the NBA then, and I covered a lot of Duncan. Obviously, I did 3 books that with a 1-year period of young adult books, and they were all. And I'm not saying this. Guys that have later written books on Clemens and things like that, they use my books for, and I have them right up here. I did one on Clemens too, and I did one on Duncan. It's a great little book. Talks all about how he became Tim Duncan, basically. Another great guy. He's was Aaron Judge of NBA type guy.
Are the Spurs appreciated the way they should be?
No, I don't think so. Because and then we had the '99, that year and things like that. So I love doing those kind of books because you can really dig into their childhood and you find some things. I'll make this a quick story. And this was in the Rocket book and was taken by other authors later on. And they gave me credit. Rockets, his mom, his dad walks out or whatever, doesn't know his dad, Roger Clemens. His mom gets remarried to a guy who has a gas station, Woody, and he's a great guy, brings the whole family together. He's got the sisters. And he dies at the dinner table with a heart attack. They rush and his Roger's sister told me to sing the story. Johnson is her last name. They were older, the kids, but Roger was like 8. Roger, wanting to see what was going on, stacked a bunch of books so he could climb up and see the ambulance come. And so he wasn't, even at that age, he wasn't a kid that went to the corner and started crying. He wanted to do something to help his sisters. And so he stacked all these books up to see what was going on and gave them a play-by-play of what was going on. Fast forward years later, they're at an Easter dinner, and Roger he's very particular with the girls. They all have 3 favorite colors. He gives Easter eggs, plastic Easter eggs with each of those colors in them, with each of those colored eggs. Inside, he goes, and they like, oh, thanks, Roger, blah, blah. And then they open it up. There's inside are keys to beautiful SUVs that are all parked in the driveway, all those colors. So by doing those books, I got to do, and Tim Duncan, same stuff is in that book. I got to, and I did one on Bernie Williams as well. They were great books.
Possibly in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's another one. Posada too. Don't get me started on that. But because winning matters, Dean. I'm a big believer in winning. That helps. And so that's just a little background on some of those stories. Fun to do. I come from an era where I would really sit down and to talk to the players and get to know them. It's much tougher now. But I still, when I'm around players, they tell me stuff because I'm not afraid to ask them the question.
Well, I appreciate your time. It's been a pleasure, and I'll be in touch and stay warm.
We'll be, our winter will be over in a week, so we'll be fine. And next time you have me on, I'll tell you my Barry Bonds story.
Sounds great. Look forward to it. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks again.
You got it.